Welcome to Mental Stillness. My name is Derek, and I'm excited that somehow you stumbled across this podcast. One of my goals when starting this podcast was to bring mental health conversations into leadership circles. Today's special guest is Bob VandePol. Bob has spent a lifetime spanning several decades in training and delivery of crisis leadership and crisis response services. He served in various roles on various boards, delivered TED Talks, been quoted in professional and clinical journals. If you think about some of the very public tragedies and crisis situations in the last 30 years, there's a good chance Bob has somewhat been involved. 9/11, the Aurora shooting, Virginia Tech, Hurricane Katrina, the list goes on and on. Because of his expertise, he managed the Crisis Care Network's command center in Manhattan after the 2001 terrorist attacks. He helped grow the Crisis Care Network from a startup to the world's largest provider of critical incidents response services. Despite all of these accolades, we had such a down-to-earth conversation, and he touched on what led him towards the work that he does. I got connected to Bob through Cal Beyer, who I recently had on the podcast, and Cal thought that me and Bob would hit it off. And that is exactly what happened. So enjoy my conversation with Bob.
Hi, Derek. Good morning. I'm coming to you from the shore of Lake Michigan in Michigan, and where I live with my wife and very near my 3 children and their spouses and 7 of the best-looking grandbabies you've ever seen. What a pile of DNA they have. Love it. My teeny-weeny little area of subject matter expertise is in the area of crisis response. And I'm a man of faith, and I believe that's what I was created to do. Kind of a tough mission statement, but I believe I was created to be there on the worst day of people's lives. And have been honored to do that. I'm a behavioral health professional. I've done private practice. I've worked in an inpatient psychiatric unit. I've consulted, run clinics, done a lot of those kind of things. But someday, when I hang them up, my golden moments are largely going to come from the area of serving businesses and organizations, schools, churches, communities after a tragedy has occurred. So when I did most of that, although I still do it almost every day, when I did most of that, I was president of an organization called Crisis Care Network. And thank you. We grew to be the world's largest provider of that service to the workplace. And so we had a nationwide network of specially trained mental health professionals who served as consultants, and we responded often to 10 bank robberies a day and shootings and natural disasters, hurricanes. We're involved in the CNN-worthy ones. I ran the command center in Manhattan after 9/11, and we did Hurricane Katrina, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Las Vegas, Boston, Aurora, all of those. But you know how that goes. It doesn't have to make CNN to be impactful. A heart attack in the lunchroom is impactful. Just like a minor fender bender is one that happens to somebody else, right? Not to me. And so that's what we did, and that's what I continue to do independently now. I love the work. It ties very closely with my personal mission, ties very closely with my own desire for compassionate adventure, to be there compassionately and with empathy, but at the same time, whoa, this is got an adrenaline charge for me. I love walking up to a group of employees or other stakeholders who've been impacted by something tragic, and you peek through the door and you see all their eyes, and you see eyes that are weeping. You see eyes that are glaring. You see eyes that are closed. You see eyes that seem to be completely disconnected from the rest of their brain. And when you enter the door and sit down and validate what they're going through and normalize what they're going through and give them a chance to talk about it as they wish safely and talk about how do we get through this, both strategically and tactically, those eyes change and they connect with each other. And they weren't before. Everything was individual. And now they have some connectivity with other people and with you and with the smart parts of their brain. And it's like, okay, this is awful, but I have a path. I love that. I could do that. I do that almost every day and love it. Yeah, so that's kind of how I got to where I am right now.
How did you go from kind of, I don't want to say being contained, but being kind of like an in-person clinician to kind of being out in the field? So what did that jump look like?
Like everybody else, I think I was dragged kicking and screaming by an incident. And so I was working for a large psychiatric hospital and, contained by the comfy confines of an office and a 50-minute therapy hour. And we received a screaming telephone call from the HR vice president of a large manufacturer because on the very first day of his career there, a young worker driving a forklift tumbled down a loading dock and died slowly and gruesomely with about 1,000 of his coworkers watching. And so we loaded up a whole bunch of folks, drove down there, did a couple days of compassionate loitering. It's really what we did. And the company said, this was so helpful. Thank you. Don't know what we could have done without you. We drove back, went to the boardroom, looked at each other and said, well, that was cool. I think we help people, but we should know what we're doing next time. And so there were some trainings that were available, primarily in the military and in public safety for firefighters and cops. And we received that training, put together a team, developed our protocols, and became quite active, which provided a very smooth segue for me to join another gentleman in the startup of the company that was going to do this nationwide. So you know how that goes. So often you get dragged into what you love against your wishes, but then it fits.
How do the needs differ from the people who are witnessing these situations? And so whether that's post 9/11, their observation, and I think this definitely touches in just people's traumatic responses, but even within that, there's nuance and just two people can see the same thing and take different responses and have lingering issues, and the other one seems like they bounce back quicker. So I guess from a psychological standpoint, can you speak into that when it comes to kind of crisis in the workplace and some of these situations?
Yeah. First, from the perspective of the person who's responding, we have a little maxim of when you've seen one crisis, you've seen one crisis, because they're all different. And they're different based upon the industry you're serving, the culture of the specific organization, the culture of the team, what they're going through at that time, and then just the nature and nurture of each individual that's in there. What else have they gone through? So that's all there. But it's amazing. It's so often people get locked into the incident, and it's, that's a bad incident. Everybody's going to be trashed after that. It's not about the incident. It's about the impact. And you can have, some people don't like to be touched, and some people sign up for wrestling. We're different. It's different with everybody. So many times I've gone out after a bank robbery, for example, and the same gun was in everybody's face. The same threat was present for everybody. And when I get there an hour later, one person is in fetal position, sucking their thumb. Another person is weeping. Another person is giggling. Another's cussing like a sailor. And one is chewing on a donut and wants to go to the mall. It's different for everybody. And if you came back 24 hours later, they may just have played musical chairs. And because it hits people differently. That's important to keep in mind. So, boy, I could give you a quick and dirty neuropsych lecture about what
Go
happens
for
in
it.
the brain and the body, and maybe okay. So there, before I got on this podcast, I was a little nervous because you and I hadn't worked much together, and I was a little nervous, and I noticed that my fingers and toes were cold. My fingers and toes are cold because maybe on a Sunday morning you heard the phrase, "We're fearfully and wonderfully made." Very true. Instantly, when I perceived a threat, my blood flow changed. And blood flow was restricted to my extremities because I wasn't going to play the piano this morning. This was a threat, and fine motor dexterity is not necessary when a threat is present. When a threat is present, I have 3 survival skills: fight, flight, and freeze, right? Or if you've gone to an active shooter training, they teach you to run, hide, fight, right? Same thing, fight, flight, freeze. My fingers and toes aren't real helpful in fight, flight, or freeze. Now all blood flow goes to major organs necessary for survival in my central core, and this is kind of cool, to the quick twitch muscles in my arms, my chest, and my legs. Fight, flight, freeze, arms, chest, legs. Do you think there's a correlation there? And not only is increased blood flow going there, but it's super blood. For a short period of time, I'm a powerful superhero because adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol get pumped into those quick twitch muscles. And for a short period of time, I'm faster, I'm stronger, I'm more explosively powerful. And, you hear those stories about little old lady's driving her car, sees an accident, somebody's under the car, she hoists the bumper, pulls them out, and then goes back to her walker, back to her car, right? And if you've experienced that, it's pretty remarkable. Not only does that happen, but quick-acting sugar is also dumped into your system to give you the hypervigilance, where you feel like an ADD kid on a monster drink at Chuck E. Cheese's, right? And you're like this, and you're ready to go because you're alert, you're awake. Where's the threat? What's going on? Gastric juices get pumped into our stomach. Guts in a knot. I can't eat. I have no appetite. Sometimes, embarrassingly, it leads to voiding behavior. Let's say that nicely. And it can go in out of any of 3 outlets quickly outside of our control. And that happens because, frankly, you can run faster with an empty bladder and an empty stomach than a full one. Time becomes distorted. Here in Michigan, we know all about doing a 360 on black ice, okay? And everybody will talk about, whoa, life ceased being video and it became a series of slow motion freeze frames. Now that's alarming. If you're not used to it, you think you're going crazy, but there's survival value in that. I do a lot of work with cops, and they will talk about when they're out at a shootout, for example, that they get tunnel vision and they lose their periphery because they are now focused on where's the danger. They have to keep their head on a swivel, and they feel alone because they won't see the backup that's there. And our eyes are now addicted and particularly attuned to anything that moves. Okay, now, those are really, really cool things. There's survival value in all of them short term. However, they can be alarming in and of themselves. Okay? I've worked with people who thought that they had to quit work because they wet their pants during a robbery. I can't come back here. My brain and body betrayed me. And it's important for them to understand that, no, you weren't betrayed. Your brain and body were babysitting you because if you ever needed to be fast, that was the time. There's a lot of research also that talks about how people attribute meaning to their experience of these very medically predictable reactions to trauma. How they make sense out of it is predictive of their prognosis. And if they can accept the fact that, okay, I get it. I can't sleep because my brain is still saying danger, danger, danger. My gut's in a knot, I can't eat because that's all going on. I'm having a really hard time focusing on anything tedious because my brain is focused on elsewhere. A different part of my brain is now predominant. It's the reactive limbic system, not the smart part of my brain that's working. And I'm going to feel stupid for a while. I'm emotional. I'm crying. I'm yelling. I'm checking on my kids 17 times at night. I'm hypervigilant. I forgot all my passwords again. I pulled into my neighbor's driveway instead of mine. And if I experience those things and I think, I'm going crazy, I'm a pathetic wimp, too frail for life, everybody else is fine, or at least they say they are, what's wrong with me? If I judge myself harshly for those impacts, my prognosis tanks. If I can accept the fact that, I'm probably a normal person experiencing normal reactions to a very abnormal event, then I'm going to be okay. If I don't do something stupid that makes it worse, if I breathe, slow down, think this through, be careful, be cautious, and really exercise good self-care, vast majority of people come out okay.
So when you show up, what's the most important first step, right? Because you're stepping into chaos. I guess, how do you get this in motion? What, in your experience, what have you found most helpful?
It's really important to realize, even though as crisis responders, we'd like to wear capes and have a big S on our chest, is the fact that we're going to be there for a short period of time. And the leaders of that organization are going to need to show up again tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. So the first thing that it's really important to do is to consult with and support the leadership, because then your influence is magnified and multiplied. It's also true that any time that a crisis happens, our first reaction is danger and we're looking for a bad guy, and trust is in jeopardy. And so if leadership does not step up effectively, they're in the crosshairs, okay? They're in the crosshairs to be mistrusted, and it does not have to be logical to be powerful. So first step is meeting with the folks that are the recognized leaders and giving them some tools and to help them to lead moving forward. Fully acknowledging that they're human too, and they're impacted by all the stuff that everybody else said. Part of that will be then to draw some circles of impact. Okay, so if we had, let's say we're in a construction scene, okay, construction industry, and there's a tragedy and someone is killed because a wall collapses. The folks that were there, present, and perhaps ducking the blocks themselves and witnessed and saw all of that, their experience is going to be very, very different from the good folks back in the office who are selling and doing the accounting for the construction firm. And so it's helping the leaders to draw some circles of impact about who should be in the same group and give them a chance to process it without intrusion from somebody else who didn't get it, doesn't experience it, and who may make me feel really vulnerable and unlikely to talk about something that I need to talk about. Okay? We also don't want the people that didn't experience it to have to see and hear graphic images that wouldn't be helpful to them. So part of it is drawing those circles of impact. Then say, going back to the construction illustration, if there were 6 people, small job, 6 people who witnessed their colleague being crushed, we'd gather them, create a situation where they don't have to share but are encouraged to, give them a chance to walk through it, give them a chance to talk about how this is impacting them, give them some education like I just laid out about this is why it's hard for you to drive back out to that site again. It's hard for you to use the same tool or machinery that you did before. This is what's happening in your brain and in your body. Try to build some community, present also, and then some good self-care. Talk about what do you do? And they don't need the 5-year strategic plan. They don't need the C-suite. They need, this is how you get through today. This is how you get through the next hour. This is what you say and what you don't say when you go home to your wife and kids or husband and kids. This is very practical. A lot of research talks about what helps to stabilize people and organizations after a tragedy. And 5 things come out. And so this is the underpinnings, and this is what we teach leaders about too. Okay, first, safety. And that safety is, okay, if there was any kind of breach of safety, what can we do to correct that and to take reasonable steps to mean that it's there and to communicate about it and so that people know. There also needs to be safety in trusting my boss, that I can share and I can be real and I won't be judged and it won't show up in my performance appraisal or be blabbed about. The next is community. We tend to heal best with others. We tend to not by ourselves, because if we isolate and we get the echo silo going, it's never complementary, and it becomes, we ruminate and we ruminate and we ruminate, and that becomes a cell. So connecting with others, seeing that others are impacted too and others are getting through it, and I can be strong because we're strong, is powerful. Third is calming. What can we do not to pour gasoline on the fire? Panic is contagious. Rage is contagious. But Derek, so is calm. And the calmest person in the room often is the strongest person in the room, right? The fourth is efficacy, which just means I'm not powerless. I can do something. Sometimes we make the mistake after a tragedy to coddle somebody too much. And that can be really harmful, because I feel powerless because I saw this wall come down and now I just freeze. And now I feel powerless everywhere. So the more you can, maybe in an adaptive function, maybe it's less challenging, less complicated, less dangerous, but to do something. Can I do something? Because Newton's law said an object in motion tends to stay in motion and an object at rest tends to stay at rest, right? So when people can do something where they feel some control, some efficacy, that's very therapeutic and helps them. If you fall off a horse, get back on a pony, quick. Okay? And the last one is hope, not platitudes, not hope on a rope. We're talking about what are some possibilities, pathways, and people who can help me. I encourage leaders use plural pronouns and future tense verbs. We can, we shall. And then when you're out on site, you run a group and you educate people, and then you're available for private one-to-one conversations because everybody's story is different. Somebody who just experienced that tragedy, their dad died the same way. Their cousin just died by suicide the week before. They're going through a custody battle after a divorce. They got a bad diagnosis themselves. They're in financial trouble. Nothing ever happens in a vacuum.
From a vulnerability standpoint, is there space? Have you found that vulnerability is helpful for leaders in those moments, or a more stoic approach? Because I'm sure you have seen a myriad of different personalities in those positions, and so what comes to mind as you think about leadership and vulnerability in those key moments?
It's a continuum. Don't be stoic. Something tragic just happened and you come across as bottom lines and spreadsheets and financial ramifications, then people go, wow, they don't care about me. And if it's an employment situation, they don't care about me. They just care about the CEO's yacht. That's it. They just care about the shareholders. So I think I like to look at trust as having 4 domains. And if I think about the people that I trust, I'll challenge you for this too, I tend to trust them on 4 levels: competence, character, compassion, and capacity. So competence. Yeah, I want my leader to know their stuff. I don't trust knuckleheads, right? And I need my leader to be tough enough to handle this. I don't want a surgeon who panics. I don't want a lifeguard who panics. I want somebody who knows their stuff. Even if they're saying, this is what we know at this time and we're figuring it out, but I need that level of confidence, not stoic arrogance. Okay? Character. Yeah, I want to trust somebody who tells the truth and keeps their promises and lives ethically and abides by best practices and doesn't fudge, right? Compassion, and this is one where you lead. And so, yes, it's okay for leaders to be vulnerable. Not as a puddle, because how do you follow a puddle? But it's okay for leaders to feel and to express how hard this is for them personally as well. And then the last is capacity. I want a leader who takes good enough care of themselves so that I know that they're not sleep deprived or hungover or so burned out that they can't think. I need to trust all four of those. Now, leaders oftentimes, you don't want to start when you come out and support them by saying, and how are you? How are you feeling? Because they are still on mission. They're still on point. They've got their game face on. And so it's important to say, okay, first I'm going to help you help your people. We're going to consult. We're going to structure this so it does. And when they're moving forward, I'm coming back to you. And after you're off mission, then we need to take care of you because you need capacity. This isn't a sprint. This is a marathon. And you can't sprint a marathon. So my answer to that is not stoic, compassionate with strength.
I love that approach early on too, but for one, just humanizing that leader, being like, hey, it's not that how you're doing with all this isn't important, but I love starting with the tactical. It's like, how do we care for your people properly?
Have you ever noticed when we're really threatened, we tend to flee rapidly to an area of perceived strength? Now, that's better than fleeing to an area of perceived weakness, okay? But any tool misapplied isn't effective. And so I'll see leaders who crisis happens, and instead of responding to what do my people need, they'll do what am I good at? And so you will see really decisive, and it makes you a caricature of yourself, right? So think about holidays at your in-laws, or think about your class reunion, right? When people are stressed, they just become more of what they already are. And when leaders feel threatened, somebody's really decisive, they become a caricature and they become autocratic and bossy and don't include anybody in decision making. Somebody sees themselves as being articulate, they never shut up. Somebody who's compassionate becomes a puddle, and how do we follow that? Somebody who's analytical goes to their office and looks at spreadsheets and figures out tactics when their people really need them to be visible. And so it's important for leaders to think, okay, what do I default to too quickly? That may be something I'm good at, but it's not what my people need. And I do that as a dad too, you know? Yeah. Just a crisis communication process that I recommend we developed in our company we call it's the ACT model, and ACT. And it's really helpful to have this. Many times I've gone out to workplaces and the leader is going to stand up in front of their team and provide the fatality notification. Daunting task. Every single one takes a week off your life, I swear. And they'll go, I can do that. And I'll say, wait a minute. When you see their faces, you're likely to become either overwhelmed or extremely stoic, polarized, neither of which works. And the leaders that have insisted on, I can do it, I'm amazed at how they don't do it. And so giving them an acronym is almost like a teddy bear, but it works. It's a helpful teddy bear. And the A is to acknowledge. One of the biggest mistakes I see leaders make after a tragedy is that they kind of milquetoast it or sweep it under the rug or don't use the real words. And now I'm in the group What do I trust? Competence. Okay, this person is ducking it. They're not tough enough to handle this. Character. They're not telling me the whole truth. Compassion. Somebody just died or something awful just happened and they're not able to deal with that. I don't trust them. I don't trust them. So if you can have someone who acknowledges it, okay, let's pretend like you and I work at Smith & Jones Manufacturing. I'm the CEO, I'm Smith, and you're Jones. And I step forward and I call a meeting of our team. And I share and I say, Smith & Jones team, I'm so sorry. I have awful news to share with you this morning. This morning on the way to work, Frank Johnson was involved in an auto accident. And we just received word that he died as a result of his injuries. What did I do? I used Frank's name. I used the word died in the same sentence, which we duck like crazy. We're all chickens when it comes to that. Okay, he's strong, he cares, he was compassionate, he used the real words. Now, it's going, as we talked about before, it's going to impact different people differently. I need to acknowledge the impact, not just the incident, the impact on the different people in a way that's inclusive and doesn't make people feel like they're put in a box. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, I'm so sorry for how this is impacting you. Some of you are close friends with Frank and did stuff with his family, and it wasn't just professional, it was personal. I'm sorry. And some of you worked with him a little bit, but maybe it was different. It was just professional. And I don't know, maybe some of you had some tension with Frank. That's just reality. But we're all part of the Smith & Jones organization, and I want to acknowledge that. Next, I want to join you without making it all about me. Okay? I'm going to build trust, and I'm going to join you. So I'm going to jump in and say, it's a hard one. I remember when Frank started, he was so excited about his new career with us. And remember how much he contributed to the LMNOP project. And I'm going to miss him too. So we acknowledged fully. Communicate. Communicate pertinent information with both competence and compassion. On this one, share only what you know for sure. That's why press conferences always start with, this is what we know at this time, right? And it's tempting to guess, to conjecture, to hypothesize, and that's what always gets you into trouble. And so share only what you know for sure. And so stepping back into role. We know that Frank's immediate family has been notified, but we're not sure if everyone that's the very closest to him has been. We're going to keep you posted and informed on that, and we're going to do so through email. We're going to do so through our board. We're going to communicate it to our managers. I'm just going to ask you, please, out of respect for Frank and his family, to stay off social media until we know that it's all been informed, because we want everyone to hear it in a safe, respectful context. This just happened. And so we don't know anything yet about memorial services or what the family needs. Obviously, they're in shock. We will keep you posted through all of these channels. In fact, sometimes we're going to tell you, even when we don't have new news, we're going to tell you that we have no new news. That's the C. The T is transition to a future focus. Never should people go, well, that was interesting, but now what? And so you talk then about, okay, for some of you, it's going to be really hard to work today. We get it. Talk to your managers. A lot of studies talk about how as we go through a tragedy, sometimes the most helpful thing is to do things that are familiar with familiar people and familiar time frames and people who get it and understand. If you can stay at work, we recommend that, but we understand if you can't. Talk to your managers and see what adaptations may need to happen in your responsibilities today. We'll keep you posted as we move forward about what resources are here. We've called our EAP, our Employee Assistance Program, and here's Dr. Johnson, who is present and will be providing support to you in group and individual sessions. We care about you and we'll keep communicating. So A and C and T just provides a structure to move through. And leaders, don't forget to take care of yourself too. The ones that I've seen go bad are the ones where leaders don't acknowledge it. And I used to have to sell this product to companies, and there were times when there were truly compassionate people that just said, it's the human cost. It's the human cost. We're going to take care of our people. And there were people where you had to demonstrate the dollar signs as well. And I remember my Dutch immigrant grandfather saying to me, "Och, jongen, if you do the right thing, it's good for business too." And do the right thing. And we had clients who measured our effectiveness based upon employee retention versus attrition after a tragedy. We had one retailer that got robbed a lot that could tell us to the penny what were our workers' compensation costs per robbery and what were the disability costs per robbery. So if you look at your chances of being sued, workers' comp, disability, employee attrition, retention, OSHA penalties, competitive advantage, recruitment to be the employer of choice, it's also really not hard at all to quantify the financial benefits of doing the right thing for your people.
You mixed that in there with some of the numbers around dollar impact on absenteeism or presenteeism, where people show up and
yes,
they're a
that's
shell
even
of
worse.
Themselves, right? They're there in body, but that's all. Yeah, I'd imagine there's a lot of metrics there that could point to the impact of doing this well.
Yeah, if you need further proof, the Employee Assistance Program Association (EPA) has measured those things. I've been able to partner with some folks way smarter than me who have developed the metrics to demonstrate, wow, this is what happens when you take care of your people after a tragedy, and this is what happens when you don't. And we can think of corporate and association and nonprofit organizations where you see them do it well and survive and thrive and come back stronger than they were. And you see those that are a footnote in the history book now.
Do you find, and maybe this has changed over the last decade, several decades, but do you find that most people are calling your organization that you were part of, and it's completely reactive? There wasn't really any kind of thing in place, and they're calling you because, like, hey, we don't know how to navigate this at all. Come help us, or where does that land? And do you see it moving towards more proactivity for organizations?
Yeah, trying to sell this 20 years ago was brutal because what the heck? You're going to bring a counselor out after we got robbed? Why? The FBI will be here, to where it's now automatic, standard. But in the middle of a crisis is a really bad time to Google crisis response. That's a really bad time to do that. And so the more you can have a good, solid relationship and protocols established with either an employee assistance program or your insurer or direct with a crisis response organization, it all goes smoother. And otherwise, it's so easy in the midst of nobody thinking clearly and nobody having functional prefrontal cortex. That's a bad time to have to make big decisions that impact people's lives and have large financial ramifications as well. So the more that this can be laid out in advance, the person that introduced us, Derek, was Cal Beyer, who is a prior guest on your show. Cal's been a leader in developing these programs and the crisis management and putting protocols in place and educating workplaces. I met Cal right after 9/11. How would we connect? I was a mental health professional. He was an insurance professional. We were both geeks in our own profession. And we started completing each other's sentences. Love Cal as a brother. There are times, when you sow seeds and the soil doesn't produce any growth, and there's times when it's poosh. And I sowed just a little bit into Cal and introduced him to some opportunities, and he has exploded with growth and helped many, many, many people in the world of construction and risk management and safety, such that organizations are now pre-planning and putting that together. Pre-incident, during the incident, post-incident, all critical parts of success or failure.
I listened to a TED Talk you gave on just the power of resilience. And do you care to share just a little bit about the bend versus break spectrum? I think that's very powerful, and I think is just really helpful for our audience to hear.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. That was fun. I recommend that. You should do a TED Talk. 99 times a day, you walk up to somebody and you say, "How you doing?" And you get a one-word answer. The same one word 99% of the time. And that word is fine. I'm here to tell you, 99% of 99 people are not fine all the time. But our culture is such that we have to present as being Teflon seamless. One of the characteristics of people that are resilient is that they can acknowledge the fact that I'm not fine and I don't have to pretend to be. It takes an incredible amount of energy to play something that you're not. That's why actors and actresses get paid so much. But we all have to be stoic and Teflon and untouched. To be able to say, I'm not fine, but I will be. Can we talk? Can you help? Can we process? Is a sign of strength, not weakness. People that do well during hardship also have a bifocal view of the situation. So you're wearing glasses, and we'll call those progressives, not bifocals, because it makes you sound younger and cooler.
I appreciate that.
Okay, and yeah, the top part helps you to scan the horizon, and the bottom part helps you to see that which is close up, like you read. Okay, and the miracle of our brain goes back and forth. People that do well with crisis can be tactical. What do I need to do right now to get right through it? And they can look at it strategically and say, how do I want to grow from this? What's my longer term outcome? And to go back and forth and to be able to do both. If you're only focused on either, it's a problem. It's kind of like if you're driving down the highway and a bumblebee gets in your car. You don't want to get stung, but you don't want to hit a truck, right? And so you need to be tactical and strategic both. When they look at who gets through it well, and it's not resilience, I'm going to define as, and I'm going to borrow from an organization that I respect tremendously called Worldmaker International, okay? They define resilience as the capacity. It's not a characteristic. It's a capacity that you can develop and learn. The capacity to prepare for, adapt to, and grow through hardship. So now again, we're talking before the incident, during the incident, and how do we move forward strategically. That's it. And they find pretty much three things. Well, more than that, but these are the three that rise to the top all the time. One, they find that me, it's all about me, lots of drama about me, there should be a movie about me. Derek, do you have any more questions about me? Those folks tend not to be resilient. They're more likely to become a victim rather than a survivor. And they find that the people who get through hardship well tend to be mission-driven, tend to have a belief in and a commitment to a cause greater than me. So as Simon Sinek would say, what's the why behind your what, right? Because when we're going through hardship, there's a part of our brain that goes, why do I go forward? Why do I not hit snooze 27 times? Why do I put out the effort? And you have to have an answer. And that something bigger than you can be to provide for my family, to be a productive member of my profession or my community. It can be patriotism. Um, it can be your faith. It can be your faith integrated within those other things, but there's a reason why. So, why focused people tend to bounce back and to bounce forward more. Two, and the number one predictor of who gets through hardship well is, do they have access to and do they use social support? We do best together. And that's a hard one because oftentimes we isolate when we're really stressed or afraid. And this is not sexist, this is data driven, especially us guys. We don't want anybody to see us sweat or cry or be afraid. With exceptions on all genders, but that's there. But do I have people with whom it's okay not to be okay and I can share? And the third, again, coming back to preparation, is that if a tragedy happened to Bob today, and we're taping this on August 6th, and you'd go, oh no, that was a tough one. How's Bob going to be doing September 6th and October 6th and November 6th? What's his prognosis? One of the best predictors is, how is Bob doing July 6th and June 6th and May 6th? Because having the life-giving, well-being practices to eat healthy, get 8 hours of sleep, get some exercise, hang out with good people, have boundaries, practice my faith, have a bank account, all of those kind of things, again, that momentum carries through. Just like if you blew out your knee, part of your prognosis is how healthy was this leg before the injury occurred, right? And so those three things tend to help people become not stuck as victims, not identifying themselves exclusively by the tragedy. And we all know people who do. 5-minute conversation and you will hear about it, and it happened to me and I'm powerless ever since, and when I look in the mirror, that's all I see. Right? I'm not being pejorative. Life isn't fair. We don't have the same resources and supports. But that's a bad place to be, driving in park, only looking in your rearview mirror. Right? Versus, I'm in drive, I'm moving forward. I check my rearview mirror because it did really happen. It did really happen, but I'm moving forward. And then I made up a word. We're gonna, and if you make money off this, Derek, I get a chip. I'm Surthriver, because there are those who also experience post-traumatic growth, and they tend to be more grateful, and they tend to be more appreciative of life. They tend to have deeper relationships. They tend to volunteer and donate more. They tend to learn new skills that they didn't have before because of a tragedy. They tend to have a renewed sense of confidence of, okay, I've been through that, or we've been through that, so bring it. We've been through it before, we can do it. They tend to have a greater connection with their why, whether that's their faith or their worldview. And those things help those people, and they measure them by all the measurements that measures are used to measure. They grow in those areas, and it makes them more adaptive to future hardships. So those are things that you can do if you're going through a really tough time. Be mission driven, use social support, and do the healthy stuff. If today's the greatest day of your life and you're really on a roll, do those things anyway, because you never know what happens tomorrow.
I can't help but think about some of Viktor Frankl's work when you're talking about the why, and I don't want to say I guess responsibility, but then also just the opportunity of you generating a why in the harshest of realities. No matter what people are going through, like, we have the internal ability and power and opportunity to come up with a why that's going to allow us to endure, that's going to be the nudge we need, the motivation for, whether it be faith, family, aspiration, Viktor Frankl in the book, he said, I have to live to, he's in Auschwitz. He's like, I have to live and get up every day and do what I need to do to survive to get on the other side of this, because there's people in here who need their stories told. And so I'm like, that's just such a powerful, and I know you pointed to Simon Sinek, that why behind the what. I think all of that is so vital.
I encourage people, if you've ever been to a funeral memorial service and everybody gets up and says glowing things about the person who died, there's a whole lot of people going, what? Am I in the wrong funeral? Right? I like to encourage people, okay, strategic planning, right? You're an executive coach, you do that. You've probably frequently said, begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind and then fill it in. I like to encourage people, okay, write your eulogy and then live your life in a way that makes it be true, so that the people at your memorial service are all nodding their head and say, yep, that was the guy. That's a great why behind your what. I had a chance to use Viktor Frankl's stuff just recently. He was in one concentration camp and his wife was in another, and he discovered that she had been killed. And the reframe and the why that he was able to grasp from that was, I outlived her so that she did not have to grieve my death. Right at that window across the street is a little 94-year-old neighbor whose 70-year-old daughter passed away recently. And she was saying, why did my child die before I did? And was able to use Viktor Frankl with her and to say, you did your daughter a gift. You lived longer than her so she didn't have to grieve the death of her mother. And little old Gene the machine across the street just went, okay, yep, that's the deal. That's why I'm still here. We need a why.
And it changes, right? Different seasons and...
Perhaps this is a little bit of why I do what I do. When I was 16, my best friend drowned. And that's him. And Eddie and I had big plans athletically and with our faith and actually our career, which was kind of similar to what I'm doing. And I got to do those things and he didn't. And so I got to experience a whole lot of things that we had planned in those successes and those experiences. That's part of my why. And I also remember I was devastated because we were very good buddies. And my mom just whispering in my ear, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And it's never okay, as grief continues. But I believed her. And so today when I enter situations where I'm in way over my head, which is daily, I hear that. It's going to be okay. And I want that to be communicated by me to the people who are going through it as well.